This week on Merchants of Change, we talk to one of Marlborough, Massachusetts' finest, Jessie Bryant. Jessie was a four-sport high school athlete before playing college softball at Providence for the Friars and becoming a captain her senior year, and then going on to a great coaching career at the United States Military Academy at West Point and Cal State Northridge. She's coming off a very successful 5-year shift at HubSpot, where she started as a BDR and finished as a team lead, principal, partner specialist. Here she is, Jessie Bryant. I'm J.R. Butler, co-founder of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes into being a professional technology salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change. What's up, kid? How we doing?
Oh, we're doing great down here in Florida. You still up in the good old Marlborough?
You know it. I'm actually in Brookline, but get out to Marlborough a lot. Yeah.
I was bummed I missed the Butler household send-off.
Yeah, there was a lot of tears,
too far to fly
Jessie.
up.
Yeah,
we were only
100%.
a week off. I was in Marlborough the weekend before, though.
Well,
Didn't work out.
for all our listeners, we got Jessie Bryant today. I've known Jessie basically literally since she was in diapers. So I think, Jessie, I would love for you. I actually can't wait to hear you answer this question, but can you just tell the listeners what it was like growing up around the Butler family?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Gosh, where do you start? So my family, we lived about probably a mile up the road from you guys.
Yep.
Yeah, so we lived about a mile up the road. I've known JR since I can remember because literally, my mom and your dad were already coaching together by the time I was born. And luckily, JR is a little older than me, but his mom decided that, I needed to have a buddy for the rest of my life. So Al and I were hockey D partners probably from before we were even born. It was probably somewhere, I'm sure our parents signed a contract. I'm sure they did, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was street hockey in the cul-de-sac, chasing Mikey O'Brien with ping pong paddles, the whole 9 yards, but it was always a good time. We were always outside playing and definitely never short of laughs. Absolutely.
The good old days. So,
oh, yeah.
Jessie, you like me, you kind of grew up predestined to be an athlete. Your mom was a phenomenal athlete. You had an unbelievable athletic career. Can you just talk about, I'd love to hear, what are some of your most, fondest memories of playing sports?
They're all the best ones, right? Oh God, that list could go on and on for days. But I mean, honestly, it's, it is the second families you make, the family you have, and just I think about, back in Cape Cod, doing belly flops into the pool. Every family vacation was a different tournament. So that, was my life from the day I was born, as you know. But, you're around a lot of the same people. You're all traveling together. You're building your family together, but competing at the same time. And we were competing at a pretty high level pretty early on, both you and I. So it was a fun balance, though, for sure.
Absolutely. How would you describe yourself as an athlete, Jessie?
Well, I could just ask you that, JR. You probably watch more games of me than I have, maybe growing up. And it's funny because I think I'm a little bit of a different athlete mindset-wise because I played so many different sports. And I think, honestly, what we'll probably get into, but in terms of your professional career and working in tech sales, because I played so many different sports and each one has its own mindset, softball is a very different game than hockey. Very different game. So I think like just like that versatility of the multi-sport athlete, you know, definitely would be probably what I would describe. Yeah, kind of. That's it.
I think
I'm like JR,
versatility.
you know, I always get so uncomfortable talking about myself.
I know.
I usually had Big Al to just talk right
pump
over
your tires. I was literally going to say like versatile and dynamic, I think are good words, because you were such a, I mean, you literally played everything, Jesse.
Yeah.
And you made the point of like your fondest memories really being about like, you know, the family you choose, right? Your teammates. Do you have any favorite teammates from your playing days, like, you know, college, etc., that and like why were they your favorite?
I got a few favorites, right? I can't pick one out. Like obviously me and your brother are still super close. He's probably definitely my longest friend, right?
Yeah.
We D partners from the day we were born. And I could go on about Al for days, but they're, I think, like the more impactful ones, because we all make friends, right? We have our favorite friends, but my favorite teammates actually, when I was a sophomore, there was one, Justine Stratton. She was a junior, well, a senior that year actually, and I had a tough freshman year, and it's like she kind of just took me under her wing, was like, "You're too athletic not to be starting, so let's go." And you don't forget those. Like to them, they just see maybe another couple W's if they can get this athlete to figure out a more technically skilled game in softball, like the detail wise. But Jay Strat's a good one, and then another one would be Jen Abrams, also from my college days.
Yeah.
And then the last one would be actually, she's still my best friend today too, Melissa Tobin. We played just 1 year of travel softball together. She's a Hawk, JR, a Hudson Hawk.
Nobody's perfect,
So
Jesse.
rival high school.
Nobody's
so
perfect.
Actually,
yeah.
We played against each other all in high school, but just from that year we played, we've gone through a lot of life together too. That summer going into my sophomore year of college, like she was, before I was driving the ice cream truck over to the Butler house for Bobby's Calder Cup party, I was, at the softball field hitting balls with Melissa. You remember that?
So I know what you're talking about, and it's not that I forget that. It's that, I mean, you know.
I'll have to send you the picture that I think Wendy took of me pulling the ice cream truck up to that party, and like it's all the kids, and we were able to cover my entire day's fee that day, so I didn't have to work. It was great.
Oh, unreal. Yeah, that was I remember it being a phenomenal day. I do remember, I have a slight memory of the ice cream truck.
That was my first sales job.
I love it. That's right. That's right. My favorite part of that day is when and hopefully nobody from the AHL is listening to this, but we lost the Calder Cup for like 7 hours, and then realized that it was literally sitting at the bottom of our pool the entire time. So if anybody's getting their day with the Calder Cup, we're sorry about the wood. It wasn't our fault. It was Sperry's Liquors. Jesse, you went away to school. You know, I was working. You know, I'd love to like hear from your perspective. Like, what do you think your Providence teammates? How would they describe you? Like, you grew up very versatile and dynamic, but like when you got focused on softball and you kind of got into those like higher classes, junior, senior year, like how would those teammates describe you think?
I think they would describe, I mean, I always had a chip, like kind of like a chip on my shoulder type of kid. It's like, it made me work hard. You know, I played with the boys, so being the only girl, that chip was there for a long time. Not being, like, had nothing to do with, being a freshman in college or anything like that. But, my coach, I think, told my dad at dinner when I graduated, like, her chip never went away. I was like, oh, she's a little punk freshman who just gets, I'm generally quiet at first. You'd find that to be shocking. But I like to just, like, I'm really observant.
Yep.
but I work hard in silence.
Yep.
Would probably be the other one.
Lead,
and definitely
lead by
probably
example.
one you'll want at your wedding someday, or I'd say wedding, but most of them would probably say planning the bachelorette party. That's probably how they would describe me, though.
That is awesome. That is great. So Jessie, kind of, obviously, what Shift Group does. I remember having some conversations with you. You after your playing career, you went on and coached at some like really kind of special institutions, West Point, which I did an official visit at. Imagine me at West Point, by the way. Cal State, Northridge, and then you became a BDR. So one day you're hanging out on the field. The next day you're sitting in a cubicle wearing a headset. How tough was that change for you, Jessie?
I think maybe one of the differences, and probably a benefit really, is like, sure, I'm an antsy person. I always stand whenever I do a call. I'm one of those people, but you're so used to hours and hours of film and that stuff that it wasn't that big of a change. Right? It wasn't the cubicle. Like, we're all used to just doing the job. We all had to go to study hall. So it wasn't that different. Like, you'd already been taught those skills, how to kind of like sit down and do your work. I just realized I needed to work out at lunch because I had some energy let loose. But we are all very college athletes. If you played at a high level in college, I consider Division 1, 2, and 3 all high levels. You learn those skills that actually translate pretty well to tech sales. If you like really sit back and listen. I remember I called you when I was getting out of coaching. I was like, my only experience is teaching girls how to hit softball, JR. Like, how do I translate this? But at the end of the day, it all kind of translated. There wasn't much of a difference. Competitive.
Yep.
It's a task to focus on. I get really detailed with, which I think is, something that differentiates athletes, is we're used to doing the work on our own. Every one of us probably did work on our own. So 100%. It wasn't that big of a difference. Not as much as I thought it would be.
That's really actually good to hear. And that I remember that conversation, one of the, many conversations that led me to starting starting Shift Group. I guess, like, Jessie, you have an awesome network, right? A ton of people. Why'd you choose sales, and how did you end up specifically at HubSpot? Because, when you joined HubSpot, they're obviously huge and they were big back then, but not as big as they are now. Like, how did that whole thing play out for you?
Right. It all comes down to a sports connection. So actually, I played softball with her all through high school on my travel softball team. Her name's Nicole D'Argento. She's from Ashland. She actually also coached with me. We had our first college coaching gigs together at West Point. She was there for a year, and then she got the assistant job at Harvard, went back home. I stayed at West Point for a couple of years, went to California, and then, some family circumstance kind of needed to bring me back home. I had already been thinking about it a little bit. And I knew she had just got done coaching and that her brother owned a VC firm. Like, what I knew about VC at that time, nothing. Like, my dad's a cop, my mom's a teacher. Like, don't think I ever heard those words, like those letters put together. I was like, vice captain. I don't know what, like, is that a thing now?
Yeah, we heard PC, not VC.
Oh no, VC. And he had referred her to HubSpot. He's like, good scaling company coming up. She's like, I just started as a BDR last week. Like, you want me to refer you in? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And then I think the next thing I did was call you, JR. And I was like, can you help me do my resume? And from there, like, obviously you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I just kind of went to LinkedIn and found similar Boston companies that fit a similar profile and applied to 4 or 5 of them.
That's awesome. Jessie, I'm like really fortunate now. I get to work with a lot of Jessie Bryants back then, like girls that are just coming out of playing and coaching. We actually just worked with a girl who's on the Great Britain national softball team. They just won some like big.
I might know her. She plays third base.
No, her name's Kendall Scott.
Okay.
She's awesome. Yeah. But I like, obviously we try to relate to them. I try to relate to them as former athletes and put myself in their position. But like, I always think, men and women are different, and it's always good for them to hear from their peers. So like, I guess I would love to know, like, what kind of guidance, what kind of advice would you give to women who are about to go from playing sports to starting a career in sales? Is there anything that you would have done differently?
And maybe this is a lot of playing sports with boys young, I was always on boys and girls teams. I'd say my advice is to just look at them as like your teammates. Like, I think girls are often just too, I don't know if it's just because I didn't have experience, but even like going to house, I was super quiet. Like, you look to your left and your right, and even 5 years ago, it was still primarily male dominated. Thankfully, I had my, locker room days of helmets and gloves, that I could rub some elbows with them, or talk hockey with them, because, it's kind of a common ground. But I think it's just like literally look at them like your teammates. I should have done that earlier, because that's really all they are. They're going to be your biggest asset, the person sitting to your left and your right, or they could, really be a detriment. Getting into sales is scary. Like, I don't like to talk on the phone as it is. Like, pick up and dial my parents. Like, my dad will text me like, "You alive? Can we chat this week?" Like, so it's intimidating. And if you don't, lean on the people to your left or right, or like, really make sure you're in a good environment that you're comfortable in, that job is just very, very difficult to do.
Yeah. Yep.
And I definitely was intimidated slightly at first, even with my background. But there's no need to be.
Yeah, and I think you had like a little bit of a leg up, kind of, because you did a few years in coaching and recruiting at like phenomenal, like I said, like West Point, University of California, Northridge, like unbelievable programs. Like, do you think those years between playing and then sales, those years coaching and recruiting, do you think those helped also prepare you for a career in sales?
Yeah, how I would describe it, Jared, is like my playing days gave me like the work ethic, right? And like the ability to take the natural ability to let something roll off your shoulder, or to kind of roll up your sleeves a little bit more. It more towards work ethic, but I think the coaching years actually made me super successful beyond the BDR role. A lot quicker. I mean, I was 24 years old coaching at West Point. I was coaching 22-year-olds. You had to have an authoritative position, but like also very much as an assistant that's like 2 years over them, get on the same side of the table and get a lot of respect and trust up front. So I think what made me actually super successful more than like playing was probably my coaching years.
Absolutely. A lot of maturity comes with that too, I think, that you maybe don't have while you're a player, right?
Yeah, I mean, I bet you like a lot of the players you work with, JR, are team captains. Like, it's the same thing when you can notice someone's shoulders down. Like, you just notice so much more about body language. I think we forget to like recognize that as athletes, but like, I mean, I've been told they want body language is key. Like, what coaching allowed me to do was like really interpret body language versus just recognizing it.
Yeah, like a little more empathy. That's really cool. So this is, I'm actually, I literally just looked these numbers up because I think it's a cool stat. So you joined HubSpot in August 2017, and you might not even know this, but so the stock in August 2017, on this date 5 years ago, HubSpot was trading at $67.35. Obviously,
I in my head had it around, like I was like, oh, probably 100, around $100 bucks.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
$67. And obviously everything is down right now, so I'm not going to use this number, but at the height of the market a few months ago, it was over $800.
Over
it was $810, right? So like that kind of speaks for itself in terms of what choosing HubSpot did for you and your experience. But like we definitely tell our candidates not to put all their eggs in one basket. We put them in front of multiple companies, and typically our candidates do such a good job. They usually get multiple offers. And like when we're talking to them, a lot of them are thinking like, okay, well, base salary, on track earnings, benefits, hey, this one's in the office, this one's remote. What do you think is missing from the list? And like, if you could tell Jessie Bryant, and when you were going through that process, how would you advise somebody to evaluate potential employers?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was an interesting one because I was completely changing careers. I was also moving from LA to Boston. So I was going across country, multiple, like you get through to the second round on all of them. And, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not taking 5 in-person interviews, but for me, it was really important to go on site, even though a BDR wasn't getting flown out across country. So I flew myself out and kind of coordinated all my interviews because I wanted to meet the team. Like I wanted to meet the team, and that was even more important to me. I already knew I was taking a pay cut. I was coaching a top 50 program at the time. Like I was going to be taking a pay cut. But I knew that if the team was right when I got there, like the company, like I was going to be fine. I was at least going to learn. I was going to, be able to take and I obviously knew how successful you had been, in your career. Helps to kind of have like seeing what it could be, and not putting what it could be too far out of reach for, the better deal now. I think that's super important. It's like less than OT benefits and things, like really find like what your comfort is in the process too. I always say like you're interviewing them too. So it's really important to remember.
And is that like comfort with your potential like hiring manager? Like you feel like you vibe with them and you feel like you're going to learn from them?
I wouldn't even say the hiring manager as much because like, they're following like having coach, like, I think that like, I knew that they, have a checkpoints they have to hit, things that they have to ask. Like they'll joke around with you, but they're really, they are very much coming into the mindset that oftentimes that they're interviewing you. And like, there's no back and forth. Like, sure, everybody prepares for 2 questions for the end of it, the end of an interview, but, I more so like just paying attention to like what's going on, like the nonverbal, right? What are you seeing going on in the office? I think is super important. The BDR job, and thank God I chose comfort, because like the comfort of the team and what I saw over the interview process, because like the BDR job can be grueling, and that's what not many people, or not everybody comes out the other end to an AE role. It can be a grinding position. So I think, being in your comfort zone is really important. Whatever you used to do to get ready before a game, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And it's almost like you can feel it. Like and that's why like going, like you said, going on site, it's like, okay, I can see myself here. I love that. That's huge. And intuition.
I think I got you get a little lucky every once in a while.
Yeah.
Every blind squirrel finds a nut, right? Like I think, you listed off all the things that people are going to naturally want to know, but
right.
The decision-making process, I don't think that it should come down to those things, especially as you go into an entry-level role.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing that I'm really like, I'm excited to hear you talk about. We have to kind of like you said, you took a pay cut, right? We have some candidates we work with that it's like, we basically have to talk them into why they have to start as a BDR. But everybody, especially as an athlete, I know you went into this career this way, like they just want to get promoted into a closing role as fast as they can, which they should, right? That's the right attitude. What do you think, in your opinion, what's the right way to approach the BDR job? And if someone is interested in getting into that closing role quickly, what advice would you give them?
I would say, and it's interesting because I, was very successful as BDR, but I was in our channel program. So we kind of had a promo freeze as a lot less account managers and AEs, if you will, in the channel program versus the direct side of the business. But so I actually got in like a 6-month hold from my promo, which can be really frustrating. It's like you hit all your promos, but there's just not that opening yet. There's still a starting senior at shortstop, if you will. So like during that time, though, what was interesting is I think I got closing experience that entire time. I was doing the exact same job at that point in my BDR career that I knew I'd be ready to hit the AE floor running. So having a good relationship with my AEs actually was my saving grace, because I started closing deals in those 6 months, for my AEs. And I think that was, 12 to 18 months of trust building with them. And they were like, yeah, go run that one.
That's awesome. That's
and
huge.
They gave that to me, which was nice.
So that like solid operating cadence with the AE, in your opinion, is a pretty important piece of like finding that path to become an AE yourself, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Like we all go through a month of sales training. Like that's not where you learn how to do the job. And you have to be like, if I wasn't a BDR first, and I got thrown into an AE role, I would have had no clue what I was doing.
Right.
And I didn't know my selling style. I knew my coaching style or my playing style, right? But I think a selling style, and it can be very different. There's a lot of different selling styles. And being a BDR allowed me to see multiple ones.
Yeah.
Right. I worked with 7 reps, I think. That's a lot to handle, 7 reps. But you start to work with the ones that put in the investment into you too, a little bit more, and it ends up working out because you kind of find your own style too.
Yeah, 100%. How do you think an AE, what's a good AE look like in terms of being helpful to those BDRs? Like you just said, well, if one of them is going to lean in, then that's who I'm going to help. What does that look like to you, you think?
Yeah, I got the opportunity to mentor some BDRs at HubSpot after the fact, and then being a team lead, some new hired AEs. I think it's make them a part of your, literally make the BDR part of your team. Whether they trust me or not, they invited me to all of their meetings with partners. The ones that did that and took, and gosh, once I thought they were giving me all this time in the world. Some of them really, it's 30 minutes of 4 years of knowledge.
Right.
It's easy for them, and you don't realize it when you're like, oh my God, they just blew my world. They saved me at least 6 hours in prospecting tonight, by just showing me, taking 2 minutes to show me something. And then I think, it's hard because, we all like to get paid and have a little control, sales reps, we like to have control over our own paychecks, or, we wouldn't be working so hard, but, it's tough to trust someone with your paycheck, right? And I didn't realize that even sitting on the other side, how much trust my AEs had in me. I might have to call one and ask them why, or if that's normal. But on the other side of it, the trust component helps a lot. That gives you the confidence you need to go close deals without a manager asking you for your forecast.
Yeah.
They weren't asking me for a forecast. They had a few they'd let me run through.
Right.
If I closed it for them, it was a bonus. It's like getting the Amazon Prime gift cards I keep getting from something that you signed before. Who knows? Right? It's they just don't expect it, and it's extra for them.
Yeah.
So, but I'd say like allowing your BDRs to have some trust on some of those smaller deals is just going to help you in the long run too. Gives them more experience to close more deals for you.
Absolutely. We obviously, like what's going on in the job market right now. It's the interviews are getting more competitive. So what we're doing is we're trying to like add to our training, give these athletes as much as we can in terms of skills beyond the intangible characteristics, right? Like so they can talk intelligently in an interview about how to research an account, write a cold email, make a cold call, qualify, whatever. I'm curious to know, like, what do you think is like a top area of development that athletes can really lean into to differentiate themselves from all the other people that are going for these BDR roles that are the number of roles is shrinking. That's just the reality. Like what's a good skill to think about for these folks to think about?
Yeah, maybe I had it just because I worked 100% commission job in high school at some point, driving an ice cream truck. But I would say, more so than what you described, it's how do I put this? I'm trying to describe it the right way, but essentially, like, it's, I don't know, JR. This one's complicated for me. Repeat it for me because I want to answer this one right.
No, of course. Like
I got a good one here for you.
Yeah, we're trying to develop. They're trying to develop skills, and we're wondering like which skills should they focus on heavily or the most to kind of differentiate themselves.
Role playing. I hated that part of training. I absolutely despised it. I probably was the worst, like ever, in role play. But it is part of that interview process. Like,
yep.
Like, thankfully, I think I had some years of experience on my belt being a coach and talking that I snuck myself through. But I hated it. Like, even as going to an AE role, I hated it. And I don't know how you got into tech sales, JR, but like I had no idea tech like that was an option in college. Like I was digging holes in Framingham in the summers when I could have been doing a sales internship. Because the only way is if you get that experience of getting on the phone in a variety of different ways, getting in front of people. I think back to coaching, like I would have to give out the practice, right? Even when I worked at camps, I had to give a lesson on hitting. Even just like teaching in any way, I think is like any way you can get up and speak in front of people, whether that's a sales internship or not in college. I think that's the biggest miss.
That's so good. I couldn't agree more. You talked a little bit when we were talking about your softball career, Jessie, about like, Justine, Jen, and Melissa. Now that you're in the tech world, I'm wondering, like, have you come across colleagues or peers like that that have become like valuable mentors for you in the new career that you're in?
So it's funny, I just left HubSpot, right? So it's my first time experiencing like how long do these relationships last?
Right.
But like being at the same company for 5 years in sales is kind of a little different. I mean, HubSpot, it happens all the time. It's a great company to work for. Like, but then you hear about other stories. You're like, oh, the average is like 2.5 years, I think, max. Like, I was like, oh, but definitely, like, there's just some people that you don't talk to them every day, right? Like some of your old teammates. Like, I just texted Jen Abrams yesterday because a song came on of the nickname she used to call me. Like, she used to call me Franny. I don't know why, but like, I'm sure there was other things like small memories like that. But like, it's the people you still want to pick up the phone and text or call, 6 months or 6 years down the road, just randomly. It makes your day. When you text them, makes their day. You wouldn't do that for just anybody. And I'm already finding that in my career, my second career, if you will.
Totally. Yeah. And you're going to build just as strong long-term relationships as you did in sports. And you were a leader for the Friars at Providence, team captain. You led, the future young women of America at the two schools you coached at. But, it's different, right? Going from an individual contributor to a leader of people in the workplace is different. Can you talk a little bit about what that transition was like, going from IC to kind of that leader title?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be honest, like at first, like because the leadership positions I held at House, I was like a team lead, like I was still an individual contributor at the end of the day. The interesting thing is I had to remind myself that I was still an individual contributor at the end of the day. Because I found myself like really investing in, the mentees I had over, what my task at hand, what actually paid my check, I wasn't paying enough attention to that. And it's a hard job. Like, I think what I'm going to do is like the balance of it is the most important, and you don't really realize the balance of it until you're in a leadership position. Once I was able to figure out that balance, though, it made me a way better AE working with, any mentee as they came on, because you learn different ways to describe things, which gives you different ways to talk to describe it to the prospect. You're like challenged there. It's, again, getting in front of people, being forced. One of my least favorite questions is like, Jessie, what do you do for work? I'm like, how do I describe that? It, like, off the cuff, like I can't do it. Like the leadership role, like really allows you to be able to allow other people to get there faster than hopefully I did. I just got too obsessed with the coaching component. Probably missed it a little bit. But I didn't have that like manager role. So it was a little bit different as a team lead.
Totally. Well, now you can tell people you're a merchant of change, Jessie, because that's what we think salespeople are.
Merchants of change. Describe that one.
So merchants, obviously, these are one of the oldest professions. They traded people for other goods or for financial backing. So what I always think of when I think of technology salespeople is you're selling change. Right? Someone's doing something a certain way. They have been for a long time. You're coming in with a solution to say, hey, have you thought about it? Have you thought about the negative consequences of what you're doing today? And have you thought about the potential positive outcomes if you did it this way? Right? And this way is, HubSpot, CMS, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we kind of, my old boss at Turbo, that was his nickname, was Merchant of Change. So that's why we named the podcast that, Merchants of Change.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I think too, like, I don't know, the sales athletes in the sales room definitely brings about change, no matter what like who you were. Like natural, like it's that team component of it. Like it's and it's not easy. Even it's a lot harder in today's world with COVID and primarily working remotely. Like, how do you make that connection piece? And I think athletes have a much better ability to do that. They've done it for a lot longer. They're not, ever just playing for themselves. Sure, there's individual sports, but like even in college, those are all part of team.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think our customers agree with you too. So last two questions, Jessie. I love asking this one because I'm always curious to know. So we ask guests always to highlight one sales skill that they've developed that makes them elite. Like, what do you think your strongest sales skill is?
My mom said I had the gift of gab since the day I was born. So not that, but I think I got really good really early at utilizing technology to do my job. I essentially was the LinkedIn sales nav trainer for my AEs when I was a BDR. Like, I got really, really good at working smart. And I'm not going to pick up the phone and just dial 100 people just because we have a call blitz. Like, I'm going to take 3 hours the night before, grab my list of 20 and get myself 5 meetings. Cause I don't get paid on calls I make. I get paid on meetings I book and deals that close. So like, I got very good at utilizing like technology to do my job and just putting in a little work early.
That's amazing. Crazy. I love that. That we have never gotten that answer, Jesse, but no. Like that is and honestly, like it's a game changer, right? We had people like that at Turbo that like just wizards with, you know, LinkedIn Sales Navigator or
building
even Salesforce, right? Like, and now you've got like all these other tools that are out there. So like, yeah, that's a really good one. That was a surprise. I like that. You might remember this, Jesse, but my dad used to tell me, Bob, and Al when we were little, like, hey guys, there's a lot of people that play hockey, but there's not a lot of hockey players. And he kind of instilled in this idea of us of like being a pro and like really like making it part of your identity. And like, you know, it's not just about showing up to practice and practicing. It's like shooting pucks in the driveway, you know, doing sprints on the football field, like, you know, doing everything you can to continue to become better. And we think like, you know, when I talk about a salesperson, I think the highest praise I can give someone is that they're a pro. Like this girl is a pro. What does in this industry, in this role in sales, software sales, what does being a pro mean to you?
Definitely transparency is a big one that just like popped into my head there. Like you're not, I mean, we all picture what we grew up with, right? The door-to-door salesman. That's not the case in tech sales. Like if there is no sale, there is no sale. Like the transparency and just putting like someone's ability to put like one, your own ability to put yourself in their shoes. Like, am I going to be pissed off sending a Karen email if I'm them, right? If I'm getting sold that good, yeah, that person's a great salesperson, but I wouldn't consider them a pro, right?
Right.
I think the pros are the ones that are transparent and honest. They're going to be the ones that are most successful, and they're the pros in my eyes.
I couldn't agree more. Like they're just trying to figure out do you have a problem to solve? Is it worth you investing the money to solve it? And can I solve it? If that's true, can we solve it? Can we solve it uniquely? Can we solve it better than any other option you have? Right.
Absolutely.
And the best salespeople operate that way.
And if we
Jessie,
can, I'm going to tell them we can't. Like,
right.
And you know what though, that person, whether you're at the same company for 20 years or not, like that person will remember at their next company and at their next job, and maybe your software at whatever you're selling at the time is a fit. They're going to find you. It's just going to happen.
Yep. Absolutely.
Important to remember.
Jessie,
don't do someone dirty. They'll come back to bite you.
Oh yeah. And people always remember those bad experiences. Jessie, I think I'm like about to cry right now because I have to tell you how proud I am of you. We haven't talked about this stuff ever. And I feel like the last, we catch up, we talk, but the last time I talked to you about sales was when you were thinking about getting into it. And I'm just so impressed by, the person and the professional you've become. So first of all, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished since making the transition. And I'm really, really excited to see what's next for you.
I got to thank you too, though, because like you were what I saw in this industry, right? Of like just always being yourself. You still got the backwards hat on today. You're still JR. But like, what was he doing? Why did he why did he go off and travel and have this nice house? Like, what is JR doing? You don't always have that. But it made a scary jump a little bit easier. It's like, that's what it could be. And you could still be yourself. Like, we're both very similar people. Like, I was like, okay, so I can do that career. I don't have to jeopardize who I am. And I can be really good at it.
You heard it here. You heard it here, folks. You can take the kid out of Marlboro. You can't take Marlboro out of the kid, and you never should. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm going to be talking with a Boston accent for the next 4 hours. Thanks, JR. I tried to hide that one.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.